I'm going to call this meeting to order, this work session meeting of the City Council. Work session items listed here for discussion only. No action can or will be taken. The primary purpose of work session meetings is to provide the City Council with the opportunity for an in-depth discussion and study of specific subjects. Public comment is not provided for on the agenda and may be made only as approved by consensus of the Council. In appropriate circumstances, a brief presentation may be permitted by a member of the public or another interested party on an agenda item if invited by the mayor or city manager to do so. The mayor may limit or end the time for discussion or for such presentations. Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. Agenda item number 1, year-to-date financial recap and look forward. Work session, Council, City Manager, Finance, and individual departments. City staff will present to the Council a fiscal year 2025 year-to-date financial summary and financial forecast for the fiscal year 2026-2030. Manager Tim Walsh, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight to look at this year-to-date financial recap and look forward session as we kick off our budget season. With that, I will turn it over to Tina, and she's put together a great review of what we've done so far this year and how things are looking as we start planning for our budget coming into the future.
Great. Thank you, Manager Walls. Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council members. So this is one of several work sessions for the budget season, but it certainly will give you an opportunity to see where we're at with our current fiscal year, as well as check on the status of capital projects and where we're seeing ourselves over the next 5 years as well. So that is the purpose of today's work session. I do want to share with you, in front of you, you've got a copy of the presentation, but you also have a report that lists all of the fiscal year 25 slated capital projects, and you'll see the project name, you'll see the budget for it, what's been spent and encumbered year to date. While we might cover some of those projects today, we are not going to cover all of those. So as we go through this presentation, if there are any questions on specific ones that we don't cover, by all means, just reach out and ask. We have every single subject matter expert out here to answer any questions that you might have. All right, so we're gonna do a quick view of our economic outlook. We're going to look at our fiscal year 25 budget versus actual figures, the progress on our fiscal year 25 capital projects, quickly cover some 5-year forecast data, and then we also wanted to add an item in here on the considerations for the citizen survey that we're planning on sending out, or actually calling, right, some of our citizens for those tax increases. So we wanted to get some discussion and a little bit of direction on that before we move forward with that. So inflation and consumer spending, right? That's where we are in the economy right now. So our inflation is below 3%, that our reserve target is 2%, and the Federal Reserve has said we're going to slow down on cutting rates. We're pretty close to where we want to be. And so while we are close to where the Federal Reserve wants to be with inflation, we are not seeing interest rates necessarily come down. So we've got this inflation rate that is below 3%, but we are seeing a pullback in consumer spending because interest rates and the cost, right? I mean, just groceries alone are so expensive. So we're not seeing discretionary spending to the levels that we had seen in prior years. So that's really the big story going into this year, as well as what we're seeing in the outlook for 5 years. I do want to talk a little bit about the federal fiscal policy. Certainly we know that the administration is going to be making some major changes, but It has been a little bit of a roller coaster from yesterday all the way to just a couple of hours ago when we're talking about funding initiatives and some of the grant and federal program assistance that are out there and that we utilize. So early this morning, we were informed, or it was late last night, but we were informed early this morning that the federal government is putting a freeze on all federal financial assistance and grant programs until they can identify until really the agencies can provide some sort of comprehensive analysis stating why they either are or are not part of the new administration's priorities. And none of those monies will be released until that report is submitted mid-February, is what was told. Well, a few hours later, and just a few hours ago, we were told that a judge actually put an order in that cannot happen, right? And that it will, it's a stay, I guess, until February 3rd now. So I guess funding will be distributed until that time, but after that time, there will be a freeze back in place until, again, the agencies can support why or how, I guess, the financial assistance and grant programs align with the new administration's policies. Now, with that being said, we do have some green energy projects such as the I-40 Tradeport Corridor, right? The truck mobility complex is going to rely on federal funding for that. I have no idea what that looks like in the future. The coalition hasn't talked about it, but certainly that's one project that we know is not part of the new administration's priorities. And what else how the chips fall after that, we are not sure either. So we're just pulling back on any of the grants that we've been awarded but haven't actually received the monies on. We're stopping right now from spending those monies and waiting to see what happens in the next few weeks. So just letting you know that's where we are from a federal financial assistance and grant program perspective.
Can you maybe highlight some of the bigger projects that we're putting on hold until further notice?
Sure. Off the top of my head, again, we've just got this information today. But we are checking on our CDBG Jerry Ambrose Center to make sure that the funding has already been distributed to the state. If it's already been distributed to the state, we should be fine. We're checking on that one, and that is a big project. We know that some of the fire grants, the cancer screenings that we were just planning on pursuing, that's going to be put on hold until we know for certain. We know that the feasibility study for the event center, which was just getting ready to kick off with interviews next week, is going to be put on hold until we know for certain what that looks like. We've got also some highway safety improvement projects that are funded with federal dollars, and those may also be put on hold. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that will be immediately affected, or certainly that we're just sitting on for now.
What about our grants for the airport, Taxiway Bravo, all of those?
So certainly we have not started those yet, and certainly all of our airport capital projects would be affected by this if it ends up coming back that those aren't priorities. Right. I can't imagine that they're not priorities,
but they could be placed on hold well past February, because to produce a report like that, I can't imagine can be done in a few weeks' time.
I can't imagine either. So yes, if anything's in progress on that side, then yes, they would have to be put on hold.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
I have a question on the grants. When we get grant funding, do most of the projects get their funding in phases, or does it all come at one time?
It's typically on a reimbursement process. So as we spend the money, then we send the invoices to the agency, and then they'll reimburse us.
And to that point, do we have any funds that have been expended that we are anticipating reimbursement, like it's in transition right now?
So we've got our WIFA meter replacement project. I'm not certain that we've been reimbursed all of those monies. That was a grant-funded project also. I know that we just recently got approved for the drought contingency plan project, and we're in the process of, actually I think council just awarded the contract at the last council meeting, so certainly that one will also be on hold until, again, we know what's happening with this, yeah. So that's
Okay.
another one.
So off the top of your head, you don't see much that has been funded by us that we're expecting reimbursement?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. So big news, right? For sure, big news. We do rely, and to Councilwoman Staley's point, the airport relies solely on federal, almost solely on federal monies to make any of the improvements at their facility and on the taxiways. Moving on to a little better outlook, and actually a much better outlook. So the governor released her budget just over a week ago, close to 2 weeks ago, and there was a lot of really good news as far as what they're expecting this next year. So job growth, I want to share a little bit of the excerpts that were shared in her budget. So Arizona continues to outpace the U.S. in its unemployment rate at 3.7%. As of November, Arizona ranked number 10 in the U.S. for job growth, and they add jobs at a faster pace than the entire U.S. as a whole. So job growth is definitely a highlight for the Arizona economy. Arizona is a top destination for people and businesses. It's 6th in net migration in 2023, and it is the 5th most popular destination for people moving to within the U.S. So again, migration, population. And as far as revenue growth, there is revenue growth. We are starting to see it levelize, right? During the pandemic, we saw big spikes in sales tax, but we're starting to see it levelize at a more moderate growth rate of 3 to 3.5%. So that's what the state is seeing, but it is still growth. Income tax, though, is a little bit higher, 4.5 to 5% is what they're seeing, but still revenue growth. So some good news from the state of Arizona. Looking at our local economy, we are seeing growth in building. I'll share a slide on that shortly. We also are seeing migration from other states, and we are also seeing TPT and revenue, state shared revenue growth, and that is also at moderate levels. So again, not those double-digit growth numbers, but there is growth. So that is good news for our local economy as well. So as far as building growth is concerned, so far year-to-date in November, we're ahead of where we were last year for single-family residential units, and so we are expecting at the end of fiscal year 25 to just slightly beat fiscal year 24. And we have already seen, I want to say 3 or 4 new commercial building permits issued, so we think that we might be able to reach about 7 by the end of fiscal year 25 as well. It'll just depend on what comes through the pipeline, but certainly seeing growth there. And then revenue growth, just to show you what that looks like, it is moderate growth, right? We're not seeing big spikes or any big dips, but the state shared revenue is solely based on whatever the state is projecting, so that is what we're projecting as well. And that covers the economic outlook for federal, state, and local levels. Moving on to the fiscal year 25 budget versus actuals. So what we're looking at here is we want to make sure that whatever we budgeted, we're seeing a trend and that we are going to collect what we think, right? That's the purpose of these numbers. And so we're 42% through the fiscal year. And so what we're hoping is that on the revenue side, we are exceeding that 42% number. And on the expenditure side, we're hoping we're spending less than what was budgeted. And when you look at the general fund on these two tables, that top table are our revenues, and you'll see that bold number on the far bottom right-hand side. It says 44%, so we are exceeding where we are expecting to be this fiscal year. And the positive point of all of that is that most of that is in TPT, and TPT is our major revenue source for the general fund. So it's good that we are exceeding our expectations there. And then looking down at the expenditures, we want to be less than 42%, and we are. We're below where we budgeted, and that is normal. We should be right about that level for us. So the general fund is looking exactly where we would expect it to be at this point. And then as far as HERF, it is a little bit of a different story. Overall, the revenues are exceeding the 42% level, but that is mostly because of investment income. We are seeing our restaurant and bar sales tax decline slightly. Again, that goes to that discretionary spending. People aren't going out as much. They're not traveling as much. We're seeing hotel tax pretty level and flat as well. So restaurant and bar tax is dedicated to HERF. So we're going to see not quite where we were hoping we would be. Maybe there'll be a recovery before the end of the fiscal year. This is only through November, so we're only a few months in, but we are seeing that. And then our highway user fund revenues, I got that backwards. Our highway user revenue fund is slightly down where the state was expecting us to be as well. So, but overall, 43% of revenues collected. And from the expenditure side of the house, it is 40%. So again, below that 42% where we were hoping that we would be. Or hoping we wouldn't be, actually. And then looking at the enterprise funds, I didn't go into detail on that. Other than the airport fund, all of the revenues are exceeding the 42% level, and all of the expenses are below that 42% level. The airport fund's revenues are just slightly below the 42% level, but their expenses are very low too, so I don't expect any issues. We don't have any reason for concern. It's just slightly below that 42% level.
Tina, can you talk to why that could be?
So we're seeing that, well, one of the reasons is that on a quarterly basis, we collect the revenues from Kingman Patriot Rail. That's only on a quarterly basis, so we haven't gotten that second quarter payment, and that is likely the biggest reason of all. We are seeing a slight decline in the in Cassie's parking fees too. Nothing to be alarmed with yet. So we still feel confident we'll meet close to expectations, if not exceed expectations by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, these are some of the key projects for fiscal year 25. I'm going to hand it over to Manager Walsh to cover.
Thank you. So just going through some of these key projects that we have that are on the books for FY25. As you're all aware, the Dross site has been complete. That was quite a big project for Kingman, and that is completed. The fire station remodels, so we've got 3 fire stations and some remodel work at the police station. That contract has been awarded, so that project is underway. The fire rescue unit, we had that at the last council meeting, and we've purchased that unit, and it is operational. Fire Station 25, we are currently working on an architect to design that for us. We're working on procuring that architect. So that's in progress in order to bring that design, get that started. City Hall HVAC replacements, those are complete. The permitting software, that is one that's taken a little bit longer than initially anticipated and not do any part to staffing. Really, we purchased the software, we've got it on board. It's really a matter of going through all of our business practices in order to make sure that once we roll it out, it's as seamless as possible. So that is in progress. We're hoping for late summer, early fall to actually have that open to the public and have them using that. Grandview Pool, if you remember this summer, we had a consultant come out. There were some findings initially through one of our voluntary inspections. Had a consultant come out, analyze the pool, looked at it, everything's safe there. But we did plan on doing some changes to the pool this year, doing some redesign and doing some upgrades there. The design has taken a little bit longer. We found a few things during design that took a little bit more to work on. So the design is complete, but rather than start into that project and have that pool in pieces when summer comes around, we're going to do a couple of touch-ups, get that pool operational for the summer, and then pick it back up once that season's over. Let's see. Page. Lewis Kingman Park, the upgrades are complete over there, and that park looks great. We got the new bathroom, new awnings, new playground equipment all installed over there, so it's looking really good. The Sunbelt Park, we are at about 60% on design, and we have an RFQ out for a CMAR, construction manager at risk, to be able to continue with that project. So We got designed to a certain point. We want to bring a contractor on to help us, do the best design, value engineering the project as we go, so we get the best bang for our buck on that one. And then, let's see, Eastern Street improvements, that project is complete. Working really well there, not having to drive through the one-way streets and have all that congestion in those neighborhoods. Now we've got that straight access right to Airway, so that was a great project. Rancho Santa Fe, that is under construction right now. They're moving that along. It'll take a little bit before we start seeing the big work, but they are out there. We're having weekly meetings with them, and they're getting everything prepped. They're currently working on the Rattlesnake Wash box culvert there. They're getting that ready to expand and to allow for that. So that's why you're not seeing all the movement like you see over on the West Kingman TI. And then the traffic interchange landscaping is complete, the Stockton Hill interchange, and that turned out just beautiful over there. I think that they did a great job on doing all of that. Grace Neal Sewer Main, that construction contract has been executed, so that we should start seeing that construction going fairly soon. And then we've also awarded the contract for the Santa Rosa transmission main, which will provide, much needed pressure over on that east bench in that area, and alleviate some of the booster pumps that are having to make up for that pressure over there. So a lot of good things going on, and more still to come. So thank you.
All right, so moving forward to the 5-year forecast. So some of the things that we want to highlight today are some of those major service level changes that we've talked about over the years and that we know we want to incorporate in the next 5 years. So I want to make sure that we highlight those so that you're aware as we go through the numbers. So we've got the full build out of Sunbelt Park that would be complete in fiscal year 29. And that would take a $15 million GO bond to the voters in November of 2026. We also have programmed a recreation center that would be fully operational in fiscal year 29. And we would take a $14 million GO bond to the voters in November 26. Now, at the time that we put this 5-year forecast together, we currently have the recreation center in there. I know that once the feasibility study comes back and maybe it's found that an event center and recreation center is a better project that we can afford, then that would be something, the council would direct us otherwise. But for now, the recreation center is just included in the 5-year forecast. And then the Fire Station 25 would be fully constructed and staffed in fiscal year 28. And the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway TI, the parkway itself from Louise to Airway, and Airway from Prospector to the Parkway would be fully constructed in fiscal year 27. So those are major service level changes. Yes, Councilman Savage.
Hi, Tina. Concerning the GO bonds, are they going to be included together, or are they going to be separate on the ballot?
I think that's something that the council will need to decide. Manager Walsh?
Yeah, and that's just it. So these projects are basically things that we're looking forward to in the future. But yeah, that would be a decision that as we get closer to that, do we want to combine them? Do we want to separate them and see really what the strategy is on moving those forward?
Now,
So-
included with that, in the past couple of years, we tried passing that 0.5% to help with first responders and everything. Would be something included in that, or is that going to be separate on our decision, or what?
So currently what we're looking at, and I think that's later on in the presentation,
Okay.
so we'll get further into that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Savage, if I can just respond to, the GO bond is typically, it's what we call a secondary property tax, and it's for a period of time, right? And it's for a specific project. When we're talking about funding public safety or streets or whatever that might be for a sales tax increase, that would be something different, right, than the GO bond. We
Okay,
wouldn't be
so
able to combine the two.
So we're just, our constituents know that will be a property tax added for the GO bonds.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So then some other considerations, not major service level changes, but other considerations that are in the 5-year forecast. At the last council meeting, we talked about the sale of 519 East Beale Street. We've talked about expanded police officer presence. Certainly in the East Bench, as it expands, there will be expanded police officer presence. Possible purchase of 790 industrial park acres. The ongoing public safety pay plan step increases, an open pay plan increases, and across the board COLAs. Continued funding for our street maintenance program. Recurring rate increases to the water and solid waste services, and progressively higher debt service. And I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide for you as well. So as far as the debt service, currently, and this is general fund debt service, for our debt service, we currently have our PSPRS unfunded liability debt that was issued back in 2022, I believe. And that goes out until 2038, and it's $2.72 million. Now, we know that we are going to be bringing to you very soon the Santa Rosa transmission main financing, as well as, if you recall, when we issued the first check to ADOT back in June, we were short about $4 million, and we had to borrow money from our capital projects fund, and we knew we were going to have to pay that back through debt. So the Santa Rosa transmission main and about $4 million, which is that reimbursed capital project fund for the traffic interchange, will be brought to you in April to consider signing a resolution for the financing documents. So that'll add ultimately about $290,000 in additional debt. Then we have the Airway Avenue, Prospector to Rancho Santa Fe Parkway, and the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway Grand Canyon to Airway project that we need to issue debt for, and that is almost $13 million, and that'll add about $1.1 million in debt by fiscal year 30. And then lastly, for Fire Station 25, we are planning on funding some of that with cash, but financing $6 million of that, and that is about a $460,000 payment. So by the time we get to fiscal year 30, we are looking at close to $4.5 million just over in debt. Now, we do have the capacity for that, and we've got the coverage and the revenues to cover it, but you'll see that definitely increases over that period of time. Just wanted to be sure you're aware of what will be coming to you and what to expect in the next few years when it comes to our debt. I do want to talk a little bit about the PSPRS unfunded liability and our contribution rates. So when we issued the debt back in the day, we issued almost $8 million in debt. Now, most of that was going to pay the unfunded liability at the time. We also included $4.6 million to set aside in a contingency reserve fund. So, because we know that assumptions aren't always going to be met, right, at the system, and that we were going to need to contribute money at some point over time. So we borrowed an additional $4.6 million for that. I bring that up because you'll see here on the slide in front of you that before we issued the debt for the unfunded liability, our contribution rates for both police and fire for the system grew from 44%, we'll just look at the tier 1 for fire, in fiscal year 19, all the way up to 58% in fiscal year 21. As soon as we paid off that unfunded liability, you see that it leveled out under 14%. Well, one of the things, and a big factor, is anytime that we want to improve our salaries for our public safety employees, that's going to have an effect. And so in fiscal year 24, we did a complete restructure of the plans, and we now are seeing that those rates, we're seeing that the rates are going to increase this next year. So it's going to jump from almost 14% to 19%. Now, that doesn't necessarily hurt us. We are still close to 100% funded, which was our goal, right, with the debt, but we are under 100% funded. We are recommending, and we'll bring that to you at during the work sessions in May that we utilize that $4.6 million to get us back up to the 100% funding. We can do that, and that will get us back to the 100% funding. And then hopefully we'll start to see those contribution rates go back down over time. So I wanted to be sure to share what we just got this information out about a month ago, and I want to be sure that you are aware also of what that's going to look like this upcoming year. It's about a $500,000 swing between the PSPRS contributions last year versus what we expect them to be in the upcoming year, just in the rate difference.
Tina, in the coming years, I know you don't have fiscal year 26 up, or 27, but will that continue to increase at about the margin that it increases between 25 and 26?
We're hoping not.
Well, I mean, if we do that, then no, but if we don't, then it will continue to increase at that differential?
It will. It wouldn't be at that differential because unless, of course, the council decides they want to make an adjustment, right, to the public safety plan. But if we keep the plan the way that it is, it would not jump to that increment. This is 2 years behind. The public safety contribution rates are 2 years behind when we do something. And so that's why we're seeing that in fiscal year 26. It's because of fiscal year 24. So if nothing changes and we move along business as usual, I would expect it to increase maybe 0.5%, maybe 1%, maybe not at all, but it certainly won't jump another 5 or 6%.
So that would be the highest margin that we would see if we didn't do anything.
If we didn't do anything, and investment is all of the other assumptions at PSPRS are the same. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Vice Mayor Samley.
Sorry. I always have those off questions.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. I just hate to commit to something. On the general fund major revenue sources, what we're seeing, again, we're seeing that moderate growth. So we are seeing growth over the next 5 years through fiscal year 30 in TPT. And then again, state shared revenue is mirroring what the state is projecting for the growth as well. And then as far as the general fund revenues, expenditures, and transfers, how do those line out? So the light blue line are revenues and the dark blue line are expenditures. And for the most part, they align pretty well, other than in fiscal year 26. And the reason for that has to do with the possible purchase of the industrial park land, moving some of the monies from the general fund into the capital project fund, as well as moving additional monies, getting those reserves down and funding some of the out-year projects. So that's the reason for that big variation. But as you see going forward, they align pretty well. And then also looking at the general fund unassigned fund balance, the council had given direction that they want to maintain about a 30% level, and you'll see that we get there by fiscal year 29. We will be at that 30% level based on the 5-year forecast we have in place today, and then it will start to see a slight increase in fiscal year 30 to 32%, and that'll maintain about that level looking out in fiscal year 31 and fiscal year 32 as well. It's just not on these slides. And that covers the 5-year forecast. And the next slides I'm going to hand over to Manager Walsh.
Thank you, Tina. So as you all know, council directed staff to pursue this public survey in order to determine the support for either a sales tax increase or a property tax. We've met with the consultant and we're moving forward with that. Some of the questions that want to be asked in that survey is, what would that money be used for? You know, it'd be nice to think that we could go out there and say, hey, we want to raise these taxes, and everybody, you know, jumps up and say, yeah, me first. But generally, they want to see, okay, what are you going to spend that money for? And having that justification definitely helps with our chances in being successful with that. So as Councilman Savage mentioned, you know, one of the considerations would be public safety. Another consideration would be street maintenance fund. And then another one would be a non-enterprise fund capital projects, which, you know, could be used for, as we're looking forward to expanding some of the considerations, if we annex additional land, in different areas, possibly needed more would be more fire stations in order to cover those areas and increase response times. Other buildings, possibly expansion for police. So it could be used for public safety, it could be used for, city facilities, could be used as co-workspace, different things like that. So that would be a non-enterprise capital fund project. Other considerations would be, improving parks and rec, improving trails, improving, the Sunbelt Park, rather than going for a GO bond, source it to one of the, a property tax or a sales tax that could then be accumulated over time and used to fund those things. So that would be, one of the questions I think staff is looking for from council is, which items would you like us to present to those voters in considering this, either a sales tax or a property tax? Some of the things to look at with our street maintenance program, as Tina mentioned, we're currently bringing down the unassigned fund balance in order to cover that program. And at a certain point, we're at that 30%, and we can't continue to go down. So bringing that, either the sales tax revenues or a property tax revenues in, that would offset that would allow for that continued improvement for those streets. Talking with Public Works, once we're able to address all of the roads, they're estimating right around that $5 million range in order to maintain that project, or maintain that program. And what we're seeing, just to give you some ideas as far as revenue generation, a half-cent sales tax, we would see it right around $5 million. And you've got some of those slides. Yeah, if you go to those slides, I think that's...
So I have a question before you jump
Yeah.
into that, because I did, our funding source the monies we took out of the general fund to fund that street maintenance program that we did a few years back, that levels out at what year?
Fiscal year 30.
Fiscal year 30? And you were saying, Manager Walsh, that they anticipate $5 million a year to keep it at the level that we are currently at
That's correct.
in funding that program.
That's correct. Once we're
Okay.
able to go through and address all the roads, bring them to a reasonable level, then in order to maintain it, the estimates would be right around $5 million going forward. Now, obviously, inflation and those types of things could play into it, but right now, those are the numbers that we're looking at, yeah.
Okay. And what were we spending? Was it 10 million a year? Or what did we put in there?
So over the course of the entire program, we put in 45 million from the general fund. It'll equate to 45 million, and they've got another couple $1 million in their fund
Okay.
that they're using.
Per year, though?
It's about $8 million
$8
per
million
year.
per year.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So looking at that, so going back to, just real quick, and if I'll circle back to that as well. So a sales tax increase, a half-cent sales tax would put you right around $5 million in revenue generated. If you look at a property tax increase, in order to reach, in order to reach that $5 million levy, you'd be looking at $1.78 per $100 assessed value. And for a $250,000 home, you'd be looking at $445 annually for the vote, or, for that resident. So just to kind of give you an idea of where those go, and almost looking strategy-wise, which way would be better in order to address those? Which do we think that our voters would be, most supportive of? Just a couple things to consider. If we looked at the street, and we're looking at all of these and trying to identify, which route would be the best. Public safety, obviously, that would allow us to increase that police presence in order, also allow us to, staff our fire departments and allow for those continuing operations. The street maintenance program, one benefit, and coming back to your question, Vice Mayor, we're currently at levels where we're spending about $8 million a year in order to get up to speed where we need to be. If we were able to put in a sales tax prior to that year 30, those funds could then be used, to bolster the general fund and be used towards other projects that are important to council. So by timing it correctly, if we were able to get a sales tax in, say, 26, it would probably go into effect around 27. So then you would be looking at probably about three to 3.5 years of an overlap between bringing down our unused, or I always forget, unassigned, thank you, our unassigned fund balance. So you could support that with that sales tax increase, and then that would allow for some additional funding for some of these bigger projects that we've been looking at. So it would help offset those. And then again, looking at the fire station 5, and then if we continue with go forward with annexation over on that southeast bench, possibly a fire station 6 that would need to be built down there. Police station's outgrowing their facility. I think that's a very common thread throughout the city. Many of our organizations are outgrowing the facilities that we have. So those funds, if we went towards the non-enterprise fund capital projects, that would allow for future growth for the city and being able to support the services that are desired.
So if we went with the non-enterprise fund capital projects, that could be very general,
It'd be very
right?
general.
As long as it was a capital fund, or a capital project outside of water, solid waste. Yeah, okay, so that becomes more general. If we went with a street maintenance program and we put some initiative, can we specify those funds going specifically to that for that ballot initiative?
Yes, and we could, and I think that's kind of the strategy looking at this, going forward, is for a non-enterprise fund capital projects, that would allow you to continue as you go forward to identify those capital projects that are needed and be able to address them. Much of that funds, and I'm going to lean on Tina on this one, but much of those funds would be coming from the general fund on those capital projects. So that would help support that general fund. What you look at, like with a street maintenance program, we would be able to bolster the general fund in those initial 3 years, because those funds that are coming from the general fund to pay for those street improvements would now be supported by this sales tax or property tax increase. Those funds could then be diverted towards other capital projects, but you'd be looking at that 3 to 4 year window is all, because once that 3 to 4 year window closes at 2030, the plan is to stop adding that additional funding to the street program. So basically you'd have from 2027 until 2030, get my years, to 2030 to see those savings. But then after that, you would need that revenue in order to maintain that street maintenance program going forward. And then public safety, it would be a matter of looking at the percentage of the general fund that supports public safety. Currently, I think between police and fire, we're just over 50% roughly in supporting the operational costs for public safety. So that would, any increase towards public safety would help, one, expand those services, but also two, take some of that relief off of the general fund.
And we could get specific with that one as well, correct?
We could-
It could be specific to public safety.
Yes, and we can do that with any initiative. We can make it as specific as we'd like, or as broad as we'd like. So
Okay.
yes.
I just think that is going to be very instrumental in getting the public to trust that these funds are going to go towards specific needs of the city. So,
Yes.
okay, thanks.
Believe that.
I was just going to add on that, certainly there are all sorts of, I guess the first step in the polling is to see what the support is, right, from our voters. And so I think what we're really just looking for is not making a decision today at all, but what can we ask the voters or the citizens that, again, from a dollar amount, what are we asking them to support? From a purpose, what are we asking them to support or oppose? Just some direction on, what to take to, in this poll.
Council? Mr. Walker, you have any comments? Direction?
I'm anxious to hear what the survey comes back at. I mean, I'm open either way. I think as long as we identify what we're trying to do, the better chance we stand. Maybe for the recreation stuff, let's go to a geo bond would be my thought, but until we get the survey back, I really don't want to say.
So are you asking us pre-survey?
I
So
think that-
this is before the survey even goes out, you're asking us to give direction on what we want to use it for? These questions, is that what we're here for?
Yeah, so I think part of the question that we're asking, and sorry, I didn't make it more clear. So really, a couple of the things that we're looking for is, do these options up here, public safety, street maintenance, non-enterprise fund capital projects, does that encompass what council's interested in? Are we missing any that we need to add to it? So that was one of the questions. The other question is, what type of levy do we want to go after? Are we looking for, $5 million to be added to the general fund? And that's kind of what we're looking at is, obviously, we don't want to be overburdensome on our citizens. We don't want to
Mayor.
do something, please.
If it's going into the general fund, it won't pass. If it's not for a specific program, it will not pass.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee it.
And thank you for that. And definitely, and that's, I think, part of the idea is to identify, to be able to justify it to our voters is, hey, this is where it is needed, and this is what we'd like.
The problem is they don't trust us. I mean, if it comes right down to it, they don't trust where that general fund money is going. If you look at even the survey that we recently had, if it's not for a specific purpose and can't be used for anything else, I don't think they'll vote for it.
So I guess the question is, outside of these categories, is there anything that we're missing? And I had another question. Can they rank them? If they're polled, can they rank them in order of importance?
Yes, and that is part of the survey. So they'll propose, from what I understand, they'll ask, would you support a sales tax? Would you support a sales tax that goes towards public safety, that goes towards streets, that goes towards this? So they will rank those options. So
Okay.
so it's just a matter of making sure that we include all the options that we feel that they could support, so that we get those out there in order to be able to rank that
Okay.
support.
Does anybody, Counselor Savage, did you have?
Being that there's two different taxes, being kind of requested, property tax and sales tax, is there a way to kind of split that in half and still dedicate it to where it needs to go, to where the property owners aren't eating everything and everybody pays sales tax?
There definitely is, and that, you bring up a good point of, okay, seeing we don't have a property tax. I believe a property tax will be a tough sale. Rather than looking at, okay, do we want to generate that 5 million in revenue through a property tax? Perhaps it's a matter of, okay, what are we happy with a property tax, and then anticipating the industrial part growing, anticipating Rancho Santa Fe interchange growing, and those property values increasing significantly, so that it doesn't need to be that full $1.78. Maybe it's down around 36 cents, or something along those lines. So something that's, for our residents, they don't feel that pinch nearly as much as so when those industrial and retail property uses are developed, those then start help carrying that, providing that additional revenue. So that is definitely an option of looking at, and we will have, part of the survey is, which do they prefer more, do they prefer any? Would they support any of them? And having that justification for why it's needed. So we'll get all of those results back once this survey is complete.
Counselor Dykens? Do you have any comments?
Not at this point.
Okay. Did you get to say everything you wanted to say?
I think your best bet is public safety or street maintenance. I mean, anything that's going into the general fund, just from the last time, from the people I spoke with, and since then, they're not gonna vote for money to go into the general fund, because they don't see how we spend it. I know they can, but they don't.
Right.
And to your point, Councilman Ward, in the recent survey that we just got back, street maintenance was one of the highest topics that they supported, was, you know, at least seeing a need for that, wanting to see improvements in that. So that is a possibility.
Counselor Staley?
I guess my only comments would be that, you know, in pretty recent history, we've tried a lot of this. We had the 1%, it had a big ticket item, it had a super majority, you know, half was gonna be dedicated to streets, half to infrastructure. That would have paid for Rancho Santa Fe, would have kept up our streets. And the citizens fought hard to repeal that. We would, had over $80 million by now to pay for those projects that we're also desperate to, you know, implement and make improvements to our community. And then after that, we put on the ballot a 0.5% increase for our streets. It also had a big ticket item. It had a super majority. It was clearly dedicated to only that, and it did not pass. It wasn't even close. So I'd hate to see us keep doing the same things over and over again. I don't think anything has changed within our community to create a desire to invest in making this a better place. So I think public safety may be your only way to go, and maybe a different route like diversifying and going for a property tax. But I don't think one is going to be any easier than the other. Those are my negative comments. Sorry.
It's okay. Points taken. Anybody else have any comments? I think you heard that monies going into the general fund will be a challenge. So, public safety or street maintenance. I know that when we did do the last ballot initiative, a lot of comments that I heard was the sunset clause. So, I like that in here. I mean, are the streets ever gonna have a sunset as to when they need to be repaired? No. Are they, you know, are we ever going to minimize the need for public safety? No. So, I don't know, there's a challenge there, but I can see where the citizens would like to see some kind of a sunset clause, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, the comments that we had before were, first of all, a sunset clause, and we didn't do a good job of selling it
Right.
as a city.
I think if we do go to a ballot initiative, whatever consensus is, we need some outside help in getting the message out and making sure it's the right message and getting as specific as we possibly can with our ask so that it's clear, it's concise. You know, we did spend down and put some monies and started that the street maintenance program, and we've been very fiscally responsible. I think the citizens have seen I think we have put our money where our mouth is, and the citizens have seen some improvements in the roads, and now we're down to, you know, a $5 million a year upkeep rather than an $8-9 million a year upkeep. So I think we've been good stewards, and that's something that we need to challenge the citizens with. Hey, this is what we did. You know, and we spent that money down, and that was an ask of some citizens too. Before you put a ballot initiative, spend some of that surplus. And so I feel good about that decision that we made. So, yeah, that's all my comments. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Dykens?
Have to learn to use this button. Out of the choices there, public safety definitely, to me, is the easiest to sell. We need fire, we need police. If you're looking at sales tax, it's shared by everybody. Visitors, tourists, everybody pays. If you're just doing property tax, it's strictly the members living within Kingman. I spent a lot of my career working in areas where our pay was funded by property tax, and it was very beneficial. But I realize now, being in a city, that's a very tough push. Whether it's sales tax or property tax at this point, I'm more interested to see what the survey comes back at. But as far as where or how to sell it, to me, I think public safety is the way to go.
Okay.
And I will, if I may, just real quick, and I agree with you, you know, the sales tax, you have people coming through town, they help fund it. I think one of the concerns, or at least one thing you want to look at when looking at sales tax is, at what point do you reach to where it makes more sense for our residents to go to a sister city to not have to pay that sales tax? So that's just, you know, as we consider the sales tax increase, you know, at some point, are we enough over Bullhead or Havasu to where it makes sense to drive down over the hill to go buy a car or something like that? So that's just one caution to, you know, put have the whole picture out there, you know, one consideration as we discuss this.
Yeah, and a real estate tax, I mean, I know people don't want it, especially my demographic. I would support it, and there are people out there that would, the few people that understand how we run this city. There's very few people that understand how the money is distributed in the city, and I don't know how you get that across to them. But the thing about the real estate tax is that's a continuing source, and sales tax, that could go up or down. And I personally would favor a real estate tax, but I don't think we can sell it. I don't know.
And Councilman Ward, you bring up a good point as far as being able to sell it, being able to get it through. Some of the statutes related to a property tax make it especially difficult to pass in comparison to some of the others. Where a sales tax we can have on a November ballot of a popular election, a property tax has to be held in May, so you don't have them going for anything else. So getting that voter turnout is quite a bit more difficult on a property tax. So the sales of a property tax would be much more difficult than it would be a sales tax.
Just so the citizens know that on the last ballot that we had this for, there was a cap on the sales tax, and I believe it was $10,000. All right, I just wanted to make that a record.
Councilman Savage, I don't recall exactly if it was a $10,000 threshold. I believe that's what council had directed us to do, but there definitely was a big ticket option. There was that single item threshold, yeah.
So if I may, I think, you know, a recommendation as far as what staff would recommend in considering a sales tax, I would recommend the half-cent sales tax that would generate that $5.7 million. As far as a property tax, I think there's, while I would like to generate that same, $5 million from a property tax, I think in interest of trying to sell it to the voters, I think a lower amount would be a better option, and it would give us that opportunity as we continue to have these large developments that we're working on with Rancho Santa Fe, with the industrial park, with Kingman Crossing, to be able to allow those larger developments to help generate additional revenue by increasing those values there. So I would look probably generating either that 2 to 3 million through a property tax. If those would be my thoughts. I don't know if you have anything to.
Well, and any tax that funds we generate off of those taxes, it just relieves the pressure off the general fund so that, you know, I mean, we can start working and ticking through this list of capital projects. So I like that suggestion. Like you said, you can't do a property tax. It's only specific to a certain timing. So, Counselor Staley, did you have something?
I would just agree on the 3 million for the property tax.
Any other comments? What about the sunset? Oh, Counselor Dykens?
Is it true that if we were collecting money through property tax, you have a new business get built, the city's not gonna see any money for what, 24 months, 36 months?
Yeah, I think it's 19 to 31 months is what they use for real estate when they're doing their comparisons year over year. But I think new business, I'm not even going to respond and provide you with a response because I don't know, Councilman Dykens, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if they're able to identify those new businesses that year or if they wait for that 19 to 31 month period. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
We can get the answer, but I just don't know it right now.
What's the council's temperature on a sunset? Counselor Walker?
I think we definitely need to have a sunset and let the people see that we've been good stewards of the money, and hopefully they would vote it back. But without a sunset, I got a lot of people telling me that that's a big deal to them. They want to see a sunset.
Do you have a time frame in mind? What would be recommendation from staff?
I think generally what you'll see on a sunset is a 20 to 25-year sunset.
How's the rest of the council feel about a sunset? Okay. Do you have your direction?
I believe so. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That wraps up our review and forecast. We'd be happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Tina, when you said the feds are holding off grants, that totally affects the state and the money the state gives to us.
That is, if it is a federally funded grant that the state is the agency that is administering it, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, we're adjourned.